Hello guys, welcome back to Digger Gaming, and of course my name is Ben. Today we're going to be looking at the new smart scope, so the next generation squad weapon, the new sight that they're going to bring in eventually for all soldiers. Looks a bit complicated, not sure, but we've got Task and Purpose on the case again with Chris Cappy, so I'll put the original video down below, as well as Discord if you want to join that and come chat. But yeah, if you like the video, please press like and subscribe if you haven't. But let's have a look at this new fancy Gucci scope.
Forward grips and flashlights get more attention than the most overlooked part of a weapon system. Talking about the scope, your optic actually has the most potential to increase your lethality. This is where the real innovation...
It's a pretty modern thing too. Sorry to stop it already, but you can see back in Vietnam they had that long optic that probably didn't hold zero for very long. Now we're looking at computerized optics. It's crazy.
Firearms is quietly happening. For decades, scopes were reserved for only a very select few skilled snipers because they were complicated to use, very expensive, and really hard to maintain. Within the last 20 years, though, every single rank and file grunt has been issued an optic to augment their shooting performance. This might seem obvious today, but believe it or not, there was a time when running scopes on top of your weapon seemed absurd. It took the Marines 2 years, for instance. They tested the ACOG for 2 years.
I mean, we always had the donut of death, the reticle sight. I think it was only 1.5 or 2 times though. So we always had glass sights on our rifles, and then we started to go into optics like the ACOG, Alcan, Wildcat, stuff like that.
Before they fully implemented it. That's how skeptical and traditional the military is. But you can't blame them, right? After all, they were using iron sights in combat for, I don't know, like the past 300 years?
Yeah.
So the Army's about to choose a winner in the competition for the next-gen optic, which is being developed hand in hand alongside the 6.8mm NGSW rifle program. L3...
I don't know if it's because I've used a bullpup before, but that weapon seemed like such a better choice in my opinion. Had similar statistics as the SIG Spear. Looks lighter, looks quicker to use, and could still have the same distance. So.
Harris and Vortex are in the running to create the U.S. Army's
That's the one that has won.
Scope. L3 Harris sent me exclusive footage of this system in action, and I had the opportunity to interview their engineer team. I also spoke with the Army's new Lieutenant Colonel, who's in charge of the Next Generation Squad Weapon Program, in order to get a better sense of how this is going to affect Army tactics and doctrine. I think my generation of veterans is probably going to be just as skeptical of this next-gen fire can just fancy computer optic as the last generation was of ACOGs. I asked whether the next-gen fire control would still work without batteries, how many troops the Army plans to issue these expensive new tools to, and whether or not the added 2.5 pounds on top of your weapon is going to be too heavy. We'll also speculate a little bit about this change and how it's going to affect ground combat in the future. But first, let's talk about how we got from iron sights to computer sights, because I think it's one of the most important and least understood parts of military history, which is going to have huge consequences in the next conflict. Wait, are you telling me all the...
I'm going to say, like everyone says, it's a bit like the compass and the GPS thing. You'd have to be trained up on iron sights before you'd go and use something like this. Same as with the, it's good to have a GPS, but if you can't use a compass, then...
Hours I sunk into learning how to shoot targets out at 900 meters with just my iron sights was for nothing. Some computer could replace all of it? Cool, I guess I'll just go myself. Time for a quick message from our partner. If you're interested in more content that explains how military weapon systems work, then you'll want to check out Gun Mag Warehouse and their outstanding YouTube channel. Gun Mag has valuable videos that show things like the best way to clear double feeds from your magazine, or the correct way to train on pistols. If you're like me, then you like all kinds of mags. You like you. Back to the video. So I want to illustrate just how big of a change combat optics have been. There's a story from Iraq that came out in 2004, right around when the ACOG performance stats were starting to come back from the front lines. And it said, quote, Marines with the ACOG equipped M16A4 in Fallujah got so many headshots against the enemy that until it was closely examined, observers thought the insurgents had been executed, end quote. So the introduction of combat optics on the battlefield was so overpowered that the enemy accused the US Marine Corps of cheating. People couldn't believe these optics were actually that accurate and effective. In order to understand the future of optics, we need to go back and quickly talk about how they became so commonplace in the first place. The origin of scopes traced their roots to Utica, New York, where the first practical rifle scope was invented in 1835. In a book titled The Improved American Rifle,
Let's have a look at that thing. Imagine trying to zero that and get a sight picture out of that little thing. That's nuts.
John Chapman wrote about how it was the first scope to not break after a few shots. General Malcolm, he's a military general at the time, basically stole that idea and made a better version, and then used his military connections to make his scope the standard issue sniper scope in the American Civil War. Sounds like he inspired a couple of generals since then. The reason only a select few had scopes between 1835 all the way to like 1995 is because they weren't durable and they cost too much. The field of view was very limited, the eye relief was terrible, and some of these optics like the CCO were reliant on batteries. Many weapons like the AK...
Yep, so same as the Steyr OG or the Oz-Steyr. Pretty narrow field of view. Pretty durable sight though. I think it's been improved now having the Alcan Spectre on it, the 1 to 4 times sight. Yeah. Pretty good now.
Have good mounting options. These old fixed magnification sniper scopes from like World War II.
That's the thing too. You know, 20 years ago there wasn't Picatinny railing all over everything. Now it's sort of a must-have. Same as Molly.
Those are what I would call Generation 1. When you look at the history of ground combat, you start to notice kind of a pattern where every 100 years or so, the average distance of engagement fluctuates between going shorter, going longer. So for instance, in the 1700s, back when they only had muskets, the average distance of combat was only 75 meters.
Yeah.
Once they invented rifling, it went longer to 300 meters. And even though in the 1940s, they already had weapons and calibers that were powerful enough to reach out to like 900 meters, there's another problem. If you can't see the enemy, you can't hit them. And at the time, only a very few amount of select, skilled soldiers had scopes. The whole idea of this next-gen fire control system is that it makes hitting targets at longer range easier, so you don't need all of that training in order to do that.
Yeah, and that's going to be something pretty amazing to be able to hit targets 800 meters. There's no real issues at all. I don't think I've ever shot 5.56 out that far. It'd be sort of indirect fire, I think.
The first time we started seeing these optics was actually during the 1980s in military tests.
Yeah, so that sight,
the M16.
both those sites we used them a lot.
Scopes ended up being adopted. It wasn't until 1995 when we first saw the first Special Forces units start to adopt the earliest ACOG.
And they've got the PEC there as well. That's pretty cool to see.
And close quarters combat optics. This is what I would call Generation 2, which is what we call optics now. The ACOG actually uses fiber optic to operate, so it works without batteries. In 2008, the Army made it their policy for every single rank-and-file U.S. infantryman to be equipped with some kind of optic. A little over 10 years later, we're now getting to what I would call Generation 3, which are known as fire control systems. And these distinctions in between how we refer to these scopes are important because they all have these new capabilities.
It's not really a scope anymore, is it?
ACOG, CCO, RCO, and your iPhone all combined into one. This would be the first ever computerized small arms scope adopted for regular line infantry. I'll explain why this would change every aspect of future ground combat. First, I'll explain.
Well, you're going to be able to call out target indications a lot better if it's got a compass system on the top. It'll be literally like a computer game. You could probably lace targets with it. You can shoot better with it. I think you can communicate with it. Yeah, this thing's crazy.
And how the computer smart scope's new features would be uniquely valuable in a combat scenario. Let's say you're on patrol and you see a target far off in the distance. You adjust your next-gen optic from 1 to 6 times magnification, so that it's all the way zoomed in on the enemy. You hit the laser rangefinder button, which tells the ballistic computer that the enemy is 900 meters away. The digital reticle then automatically adjusts based on the laser rangefinder data. This way you don't have to guess at how much to compensate for bullet drop at that distance. The ballistic computer is also factoring in sensor data like environmental conditions such as temperature and air pressure. There's a dang meteorologist in there. Let's say you know there's a 10-mile-per-hour crosswind, so you hit another button which automatically adjusts that reticle for wind.
I mean, I can't imagine anyone other than a sniper would be adjusting windage, and then even then I don't think a sniper would use an optic like this, would they? I think, I might sound old and crusty, but I think it's the old you know, master the basics first, shoot with iron sights, and then get qualified on this.
In order to conceal yourself better, you lay on your side and you cant the weapon at like a 45-degree angle. The weapon orientation sensor automatically updates the ballistic solution, and the reticle appears correctly because the optic knows exactly how you're holding the gun. This optic knows more about you than you do. It's creepy, really. It's the last thing that you're able to do before firing that you couldn't do in the past.
So there we go. So it does have a compass on there, which would be very handy for calling out enemy locations and stuff like that. I mean, it's literally like a computer game.
Call out the compass heading that the enemy's located at, so the rest of the squad knows where to focus their fire. You squeeze the trigger and easily hit the target 900 meters away, which would have been nearly impossible with the legacy M4, 5.56, and the old ACOG. I would compare this to like the same kind of performance leap as when we went from the iron sights to the ACOG scope. This is
probably more.
Huge leap forward. It consolidates the close quarters and long-range combat roles into one position. But what do you say to people like me that only trust iron sights, the old school fundamentals? What if a battery goes out or one of these sensors gets broken on this thing? I don't trust technology. I asked Lieutenant Colonel Headley if this system would work without batteries. He said it will 100% work without the sensors and without the batteries.
Okay, so you can
Even
still
without
side
those
up.
digital and computer chip features, this is still a powerful 1 to 6 times scope. If you're starting to get the sense that this is super expensive, I don't think I can even afford to look at it with my eyes. I feel bad for the new privates out there who are going to lose this thing and then spend the rest of their careers until they're lieutenant colonels themselves paying it off. The next generation squad...
And what he's referring to there is, you know, the expensive equipment. If you lose it, well, I've seen, you know, almost entire grid squares get EMI bobbed for spare barrels or night vision equipment.
Weapon fire control system after you hit the target, then whispers to you,
"Nice shot, that was super cool."
Okay, maybe it can't talk to you yet, but if anyone at the Army or L3 Harris is watching, please implement that feature next and just say it was part of your soldier touchpoint. The next generation squad optic has the ability to send targeting information to your enhanced night vision goggles and the IVAS heads-up display system. A lot of people...
Now that thing looks way too cumbersome. Let's have a look at it again.
Night vision goggles and the IVAS.
At the moment, I can't imagine that being used in battle, especially with these bloody big ropey thing.
Heads-up display system. A lot of people were pointing out in the comments on my Instagram that this optic weighs more, like twice as much as the fixed 4x scope ACOG. In fact, it weighs more than even your other variable powered scopes. It's 2.5 pounds. Fellow keyboard warriors like myself were speculating because of this added weight, it might be reserved for, I don't know, only like squad designated marksmen.
Yeah.
Or it might be a specialized tool for only that expert shot in your platoon that spends all their days off working on.
Or it could be even for the, you know, the section commander. That'd be a pretty handy tool to have. Section commander and like the 2IC, both fire team leaders.
They're shooting fundamentals, doing dime drills. I asked Lieutenant Colonel Headley about how the Army plans to implement this new optic, and he said the plan is to actually replace all ACOGs and CCOs within the close combat force. I was surprised by this. Apparently they will eventually roll this out to every infantryman, Cav Scout, etc., all of the frontline roles. To me, this makes me speculate that the Army's doctrine and tactics is going to have a major shift to focus on long-range engagements that were impossible before.
That's something I've noticed. I thought I did watch a documentary a while ago about the Marines using the HK 416, yeah, 416, and how it's sort of going towards the CQB role. The Army seems to be going for those longer range engagements. I suppose they're completely different forces and branches of the military, so it would make sense to experiment and get back to, you know, near peer fighting.
The past 2 decades, soldiers got out of hand with modding their rifles,
Bloody,
so
yeah.
the idea is here that you're only going to need the next-gen fire control system on your weapon, which I know is going to be disappointing for everyone who was looking forward to their gun being a reflection of what a cute, special, unique individual they are.
We'll look at this quickly. Oh yeah, this SOP mod. So this is what Australian and SF used as well. Don't know how often they put the bayonet on there. Different grenades.
They will need to create more long-distance ranges and targets out to at least 600-700 meters to get soldiers to start taking advantage of these future weapon systems, like the 6.8 and the next-gen fire control. The first thing I noticed about this device was that thing sticking out on the top of it. It kind of looks like a reflex sight, right?
Yeah, exactly.
At first, that's what I thought it was, some kind of close-quarters EOTech. But that's actually the laser rangefinder sitting up there. It's a little bigger than I would have expected. L3 Harris told me, quote, "Our squad fire control increases probability of hit out to and beyond the max effective range of current issued assault rifles. They officially engage targets at 900 meters with an SR-25 rifle firing 7.62 by 51mm ammo." I asked why this system is possible now as opposed to 10 years ago, and they said, quote, "Sensors, laser rangefinders, and electronic displays have continued to get smaller and more robust over the last decade, and these technological advances have enabled our engineers to minimize size, weight, and power impacts." I asked L3 Harris creators how the digital reticle works, and they explained it's set up with different pre-programmed modes. The operator is able to switch between those modes based on the mission scenario.
Or depending on
For
your
example,
skill.
if a soldier is in an urban environment, they can rapidly bring up a close combat red dot, or if there's a heavy crosswind, the user can bring up a digital wind dot.
So the thing with, even though it's going to bring up a close combat red dot, you're still going to have a very narrow field of view looking through that. You probably get a laser on this thing anyway and use that, so I don't think it'll matter.
With 5 and 10 mile per hour holds. If the soldier is still hungover from the night before, they can use the autopilot mode. All right, fine, not yet, but they're designing this for cars, so I'm sure we're gonna have autopilot for guns soon. Looking forward to that L3 Harris Elon Musk collab. So L3 Harris sent me a great explanation of how the system works, and instead of rewording it and putting it in my own words, I'm gonna leave it as is because I love how they worded it, except I am gonna replace every time they said user with the word operator, and anytime they use the word target, I'm gonna replace that with the word baddie. So, L3 Harris said, quote, "The operation is as follows. When in combat mode, the operator identifies a baddie through the fire control. The operator places a digital LRF reticle on the baddie and lasers. At that moment, the range is determined, the environment is sampled, the weapon orientation is calculated, and the ballistic algorithm is applied for these variables, and inclusive of the weapon and ammunition data. This all occurs, obviously, in a fraction of a second, nearly instantaneously. Once complete, a range/environment/orientation corrected ballistic reticle appears. The LRF reticle disappears, and the operator places this corrected aim point on the baddie and engages." End quote. When I spoke to the L3 Harris engineers, they told me that this system integrates with the FWS, which is the Army's new thermal imaging night vision tool. They've successfully hit targets at 700 meters using this system combined with the night optics. This is really
That's pretty
impressive
good.
when you consider the best we could do with the legacy systems was to hit a target at like 150 meters 50% of the time at night. So this really ups our night capability.
So it's going to, yeah,
FWS does
just
weigh 1.5.
had then replacement for PEC. Maybe it's going to replace all your night fighting equipment as well.
5 additional pounds though, an additional 4+ pounds. Then you got the 6.8 NGSW rifle, which itself probably weighs like 9 pounds. So a rifleman's weapon system will be like 13 pounds overall. It's about what a 249 gunner is. I see possibly a slower moving, more heavily armed future infantryman, but I might be wrong. I want to know what your thoughts are on this new.
Alright, so what do you guys think? I'm a bit like the Sergeant Major in Our Wheeler Soldiers when he doesn't want to use the M16 because it's too new, so he sticks with his 1911. It sounds amazing. It sounds brilliant. I think it will be good as long as we continue to practice marksmanship and not rely too heavily on stuff like this. As I mentioned earlier, it's a bit like using the compass over the GPS. I mean, GPS is always better and accurate, but there might come a time that you can't use that. So you want to be able to, you know, shoot when the time comes that your fancy new computer scope breaks. Anyway, guys, thanks again. Trying to get more videos out. So yeah, we'll have content sporadically coming out over the next couple of weeks. See you next time.